Aloha kako, and welcome to Finding Our Futures. I'm John A. Sweeney. As you can see behind me, I'm at the Hawaii Research Center for Future Studies. And on today's show, it's truly an amazing honor to be able to speak to a fantastic futurist, an amazing designer, an award-winning designer and futurist, and actually a pretty cool guy. Trevor Haldenby. He is a graduate of the Masters in Design in Strategic Foresight and Innovation at OCAD University. As I mentioned, he's also an award-winning futurist and designer, and we'll hear more about that during the show. And basically to talk to Trevor and find out about his work. In some ways, this show is actually a continuation of the conversation I had last week with Sanjar and Arlie about futures and design. I just wanted to get feedback on the field and really talk to people who are doing cool work. So Trevor, thanks for chatting.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on the show, John.
My pleasure. And then I realized I took you away from an amazing futurist dance party. Is that correct?
That's the word on the street. My baby actually took me away from it rather than you. So don't get stressed out about it. But yeah, it's going down all kinds of. It's dancing in the dark. So I can't really share what's going on in the room about 3 kilometers west of here right now, but I hear that it's very exciting.
Excellent, excellent. So Toronto is a pretty happening place. Obviously, OCAD has some amazing work going on. Recently, a Manoa futurist, Stuart Candy, got a job there, so he will be a professor. So there's a nice synergy now between the Manoa folks and our Canadian brethren. So can you talk a little bit about the OCAD program, and then we'll get into more details about your work.
So OCAD University, which you may know, depending on where you are in the world, as the University on Stilts, is Canada's oldest art and design school. It's located right in the core of downtown Toronto. We have this beautiful new building that is kind of the headquarters of the school that is most people's touch point with it. It's designed by Will Alsop. It's this beautiful building on stilts. I wish I had like a Lego model of it around here. I don't have anything that even approximates it. It's that cool of a design. And about 5 years ago, OCAD, which was the Ontario College of Art and Design, decided that it was going to become a university and incorporated in such a manner and went about deciding what kind of programs Canada's oldest and largest art and design school would begin to offer at the graduate level. So they started with some of the staples. There's an interdisciplinary master's in art and media and design. There are advertising degrees. But the 2 new programs that started that caught my eye were one called the Digital Futures Initiative, which is kind of a makerly program, and then the Strategic Foresight and Innovation program, which is the one I wound up enrolling in, which is the Venn diagram that describes the program works. I think it's business innovation and business design plus foresight thinking plus design thinking. And at the core of that Venn diagram is where the program lives. It's taught by an astounding degree of interdisciplinary and cross-domain people, human factors, analysts, ethnographic researchers, futurists and foresighters, scenario planners, graphic designers, typographers, system designers, service designers, every species of design that you could imagine. We've crammed it all under one roof and have tried to create what seems like sort of a zoo sometimes, for better and for worse, of all the different species of design. The program has been running for, I think this is the 4th cohort that just started now. So there are probably almost 100 people who've gone through the program or are currently enrolled. And they come from all over the place, similar kind of cross-disciplinary speciation. And with this last year, there is a particular emphasis on students from all over the world as well. So we've got students from Brazil, Russia, India, China, United States, Canada, the UK, Scandinavia, all over the place. And every Toronto, including, as you just mentioned, Dr. Stuart Candy, who we're really happy to have on board, bringing some experiential futures flavors to the program.
Very cool. Yeah, Toronto seems like the place to be. There's really amazing things happening in that program. So I want to get straight into your work and what really came out of that. So you created Z.to. It's a futuristic transmedia simulation of the apocalypse. And could you talk a little bit about what that is and how you utilized your work? Excellent. Perfect.
I'm going to do this entire presentation as a slideshow of business cards, and I've got about 5 business cards with my name on them right now, so
awesome.
This is very convenient.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I want to hear about the mission, business, and everything, but let's start with Zed, and then we'll branch out from there.
Yeah, we'll get to those later. When I came to the program at OCAD-U almost 3 years ago, I had this burning desire in me to bring together emerging technology platforms, some of which I'd worked on in the private sector and in the public sector before my time at OCAD, and new experiments in social prototypes, I guess, social prototyping, and really looking at what the feedback loop was between emerging technologies and the communities and cultures that spun off around or outside of those technologies. And my thinking was that if you tried to design for that feedback loop rather than for just building crazy technologies or just trying to motivate social change through activist grassroots, whatever sort of scale you're looking at work, you'll never quite get there. But if you design for the feedback loop, you design for perpetuity, you design for resilience, you design for the way design likes to be designed for. So I came into the program with those two hot shoes open and ready to be filled with some kind of crazy flashing device. That's a photography metaphor. I was also doing a lot of professional photography at the time, so I kind of tried to cram a whole bunch of stuff into one domain when coming into the program. And foresight was pretty new to me. I'd worked with a lot of companies that were really future-facing, that were looking at how to innovate technologically, socially, politically, and economically. But the more I learned about foresight, the more confused I became, and it was nobody's fault in the faculty of the program. It just seemed like there was an awful lot of amazing work being done in scenario planning, in system design, and system mapping, that at the end of the day, particularly for corporate clients, was being translated down into a double-spaced memo on big white stacks of paper.
Right.
And that, for a lot of people, was like the meaningful output of the foresight process. And that little bug got into my head, and I never managed to get rid of it over the 3 years that I was at OCAD, and was always trying to think about how to make futures work and the fascinating stuff happening at the fringes of design and futures or foresight, more of an experiential activity and more of an emotional activity and more of a social activity. So I'm trying to figure out where I should bring in the mission business. For the last 3 years as well, I've been working with this really talented and interdisciplinary group of creative people. Some of them come from theater, some come from video game design, some come from writing, they're journalists, they're academic scholars. And a lot of these people, even though they weren't getting put through the same pretty rigorous foresight gauntlet that I was at OCAD-U, were starting to ask some of the same questions that I was. Why aren't the most popular entertainment forms that we have in the world today, films and television and video games and the web and online communities, why aren't there more of those things that are about the technological change that's happening in the world all around us and the social change that spins off of that? Why don't we have popular entertainment forms that help us think, if not totally critically about the future, then a little bit more rigorously than you might experience if you spend 3 hours watching Avatar in 3D or something like that.
Right.
Or Star Wars, or spending spending a day on the planet Coruscant. I've got Europa over here.
I see. Nice.
Blue ball floating around. And the deeper I went into looking into foresight work, looking at what really interested me at the fringes of foresight work, the more up against these people in entertainment, in storytelling, in design, who had already sort of taken a crack at this, but had largely done it from a pretty high-level commercial vantage point. There's the well-known tropes that get thrown around and examples like Peter Schwartz and Jaron Lanier and Douglas Copeland and all other sorts of exceptional people working as advisors on Minority Report to help build a credible world around the story of that film. The birth of scenario planning with the stories I was hearing about Herman Kahn and Leah Rostin, sort of trying to figure out how to punk Hollywood and the military-industrial complex at the same time as a way to figure out what nuclear war meant to them.
Right.
There were all these really, really big, really high-level examples, and as I started to come across more of the work from really fascinating people like Stuart Candy and Jake Dunnigan and some other really bright folks at the HRCFS and Julian Bleeker at the Near Future Laboratory and Anand Jain, I kept wondering why we can't do this on a grassroots scale in our communities in a way that functions as entertainment, that functions as something that people would be thrilled to go out and do on a Saturday night, rather than something that they have to get roped into as like a research project or an academic zoo of some kind. At the same time, I started asking myself a lot of questions about experience design and about how you quantify the performance of a good experience design and about what the metrics around that are. And rather than just doing kind of a survey of how people were talking about that already, I decided at a certain point in my master's research to just throw caution to the wind and make something. And rather than making something small that would be easy to pull off and that I could spend a lot of time talking about, as it turns out, I managed to create something that took about 1.5 years or 2 years to create, and that I'd left myself about 3.5 weeks to write up as a major research project thesis. That was kind of fun. And the thing that I wound up creating was this project called Z.to. The TO stands for Toronto, and the Z stands for our anachronistic way of referring to the end of the alphabet here in Canada. Some people get really confused when they see that in America. They're
it's
like,
the Queen's English, if I'm correct.
It means Z. It certainly is. It certainly is. And at the heart of Z.to was this fictional company from the future, not unlike what you might find in some really amazing design fiction work or tangible futures work or experiential futures work. This amazing company called, I have a business card for them here somewhere, Biologic. And Biologic is a company from the future. They're kind of like what you'd get if Apple and Starbucks had a hookup one weekend at the cottage. They make these really friendly, really accessible, really easy to use consumer products. But instead of selling computers that are easy to use and understand, or tablets or frappuccinos, Biologic sells personal lifestyle modification solutions. So they sell pills, ointments, sprays, patches that help turn you into the you you've always wanted to be. They update your intellect, your sense of humor, your ability to socialize, your immune system, your ability to withstand harsh environments, all in the name of allowing you to explore the world in the way that you want to. And this group of artists and designers that I'd hopped into bed with, who I'd known for a while, but we decided to really collaborate for the first time on a big project called Z.to. We decided that the way we wanted to explore the world of this fictional company from the future that was asking all kinds of complicated questions about what it means to be human, what it means to sell biologically active products, what kind of good a virus can do if it's put on the open market, and what the corporate structure around a company that sells viruses to make the world a better place for an exorbitant amount of money might look like. And rather than telling that story through written scenarios, we decided we wanted to tell it by bringing it to life. So we created this massive, what was supposed to be a 9-month project, but it turned into about a 14-month project, where we created physical manifestations, social manifestations of every touch point that we imagined customers in the world of Toronto could have with a company like Biologic. So we built physical replicas of all their products. We hired a team of actors skilled in military simulation and improv theater to play the senior management team of the company. We gave them all roles. We gave them all Twitter accounts. We got them out in the community, engaging real biotech people, engaging real consumer tech and design people, and really tried to bring this system to life. And we ran that for about 4 months, just sort of yes-menning Biologic everywhere that we possibly could in Toronto, showing up at design trade shows, showing up on the street, going to protests against GMO this and genetically modified that, right. And just trying to build a presence for this company, trying to get them interviews and into conversations with people who were really in the real world on the cutting edge of this domain. And then the entertainment part kicked in. We'd spent a not insignificant amount of money bringing this company to life and decided, man, if we're going to keep doing this, if we're going to make this a sustainable venture, we need to really get our butts in gear in terms of designing a business model around this thing. So over the course of the summer of 2012, we ran 4, the easiest way to reference them is interactive theater performances where we invited sometimes dozens and sometimes hundreds and sometimes thousands of people to come and experience the biologic world firsthand. Members of the public, people who usually had absolutely no idea what was going on when they entered into these spaces all across Toronto that Biologic had taken over. So the first was an art gallery where Biologic was throwing a 20th anniversary celebration. They were demonstrating all their products. They'd custom curated a beautiful show of apocalyptic artwork that we figured out with some partners who were in a gallery we knew. And we invited a whole bunch of Toronto VIPs to come out to this gallery and like celebrate with the CEO of this fictional company. It seemed like a very fun thing to do on a Thursday night, and we had lots of wine and cheese. And there was a bartender who was an activist member of an anti-biologic organization who was kind of making the rounds. We did video interviews. We brought in fictional media outlets. Catalysts and Cultures was the name of this kind of Valleywag organization we created to follow the company. And everybody had a pretty good time, and they got to like try the future on for size.
That sounds great.
Really
I think that's one of the things. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I think it's one of the things that often in futures we don't get enough of is trying the future on, right? Engaging in that world and soaking it in. So we're going to have to take a short break. We'll be back in just a few seconds with more from Trevor Haldenby, award-winning designer and futurist, OCADU graduate. So you're watching Finding Our Futures. I'm John Sweeney. This is HRCFS. That is the Earth. That is Coruscant. That is the Death Star. And we will be back in just a bit.
We want to thank our underwriters.
Hawaiian Electric Company and its affiliates Maui Electric on Maui and Hawaii Electric Light Company on Hawaii Island are deeply committed to the communities they serve.
Galen Ho is a senior executive of BAE Systems, a global defense, security, and aerospace company.
The High-Tech Development Corporation, the state's leading technology agency, attached to the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism.
Castle and Cook Hawaii, with a time-honored legacy that spans more than 160 years and revolves around its mission of investing in Hawaii, creating communities, and providing for the needs of our state.
Hawaii Gas, formerly the Gas Company, a proponent of the Liquefied Natural Gas Initiative, helping Hawaii achieve its transition to clean energy and a better energy future.
Collateral Analytics, a Hawaii-based tech company empowering the real estate industry with greater and faster access to the tools and data they need to make better informed property investment decisions.
I'm Nicole Horry. Thanks so much for joining us on ThinkTech.
I'm Maria Kashen. See you next time.
Aloha and welcome back to Finding Our Futures. I'm John Sweeney. This is the Hawaii Research Center for Future Studies. You can tell because that is Jim Dater's face right there. We're hearing all about this amazing project, Z.to, who was put together and organized by Trevor Haldenby. He's an award-winning designer and futurist, graduate from OCADU. And when we left off, we were hearing about a GMO activist bartender at this Engage Futures experience. So let's hear the rest of the story, Trevor.
He looked. The funny thing is, he looked sort of like that image of Jim Dater behind you.
Jim Dater face.
Yeah, he had really big, dark sunglasses on, and he was kind of like he was a bit of a menace. I almost wore my Jim Dater Has a Posse shirt tonight, but that I got when I visited the HRCFS almost a year ago.
That's right.
2 weeks from now. But I realized that a few things have changed in the year ago, 2 weeks from now, and I'm no longer quite as compatible with that extra small size shirt as I hoped I would be. So yeah, Biologic and the Z.to story launched pretty small with this small, intimate cocktail event for a fictional corporation from the future that was attended by about 50 people. And then we had about 2 months to figure out how we were going to grow this and whether or not it was going to be lucrative to grow. The response we got from that first event was just blowing the top off the thing. People were super excited to be a part of this corporation from the future. And at that point, we hadn't really even given anybody anything to do. We just asked them to show up as anonymous members of the public to this party and have a good time, and sort of like you might go to get pitched on a timeshare or like a vacation package somewhere. You get a free vacuum cleaner at the end, so you go and you listen to the thing. Maybe it's the other way around. You go for the pitch to the vacuum cleaner and you get a vacation. I don't go to those.
Neither do I.
So about 2 months later at the Toronto Fringe Festival, we decided that it was time for Biologic to go one step bigger. So in the style of Apple keynote announcements where they introduce their new products, there's a whole bunch of theater and fanfare around it on the stage that Steve Jobs used to do, and Tim Cook does, not so interestingly now. We staged for 13 consecutive nights at the Toronto Fringe Festival this keynote announcement of Biologic's newest product, BioRenew, which is like a firmware update for your immune system that you get in your body when you take one of these hundreds of blue and green little pills. And this is the small package. I've got a big one, and you wouldn't believe how much fun it is to try and get it through U.S. Customs. It's quite a blast. It comes, BioRenew, in this little thing that we call a BPH, which is a BioRenew portable holder. They're very hard to open. They're child safe. You open it up. There's a pill in there. You pop the pill, and within about 48 hours, it completely reprograms the genetic code that you have in your body relevant to your immune system, and then uploads your original code as kind of a safe backup to Biologic servers. So that if anything ever goes catastrophically wrong, and what could possibly go catastrophically wrong, they have something to back up with. It's the iCloud for your genes. This was the first event where something really did go catastrophically wrong. And each night we brought about 125 people through this show for 13 straight nights. And each one was assigned to a different department within Biologic. So we were pairing people up with the HR representative, the head of graphic design, the janitorial staff, the head of research and development, the president and CEO of the company, the financial team. And for the first hour or so of the event, they were really just reviewing the State of the Union at Biologic in preparation for this keynote that was about to be delivered. So the finance people were going through like reams of financial data that we'd produced as kind of a forecast for what a biotech company would look like when they go consumer 10 years from now. And we produced all this data. People were going through it, trying to find errors, trying to point out the favorable angles on it. The graphic design people were testing logos for the new product and like running around the room and doing blind A/B tests with people of like, which one do you like better and which one makes you feel less like we're about to be an invasive presence in your bloodstream. And the janitorial staff were running around, cleaning the toilets and scrubbing the sinks and enforcing a general atmosphere of hygiene, but also looking for bugs, looking for secret cameras that had been planted in the space, microphones, because the rumor was that there was a leak in the house. And that somebody was going to spill the beans about what Biologic was up to before they were. So our CEO, the charismatic Chet Getram, who it turns out not everybody liked quite as much as I did.
Clearly.
He got up on the stage. He aired the 5-minute promotional video with like the uplifting music to it, which incidentally was used just a few weeks later in the promo video for the Apple Retina MacBook Pro. So we had it first, and then the band came to us and was like, we have another client who wants to use the song, and they're a real big company, not a fake big company. So it showed up twice in our world that week. It was kind of strange. He gave his announcement. He introduced this amazing new product. Everybody popped their BioRenew. Everybody popped a pill. There were Biologic staff going around the room making sure that everybody took a pill. And then it all kind of went a little bit south. A microphone was left on when Chet went backstage, and it was revealed that there'd been a flaw in the manufacturing process for the new product. Nice. And what they'd actually released was like an alpha from 6 months earlier, and everybody in the room had just taken it, and everybody in the room was listening as it was revealed that they'd just taken it and that there was going to have to be a cover-up put in place.
Wow.
And then the alarm klaxons went off, and all of these people in... do I have one of those here? I have one of everything right next to me.
This isn't
Everybody had to put one of these on, and then they had to take it off, and they had to get their mouth swabbed.
Wow.
And we collected DNA samples from everybody that was in the house every night for 13 nights. And told them that we were shipping them off to a cold storage facility. I think we destroyed safely most of them. No audience members were harmed in the making of this.
There's no DNA samples lying around in your room? Okay, well, that's... Yeah.
I don't think so. Only the cool kids.
Right.
I kept theirs. And then some people were labeled as biohazards. We still have a few thousand of these stickers left over. And it was really kind of a rude awakening in terms of what the not so glamorous underbelly of the biologic story might look like. This company that has an enormous arrogance that exerts an enormous amount of control over the product ecosystem that it's birthed, just like you could say Apple or a company like Starbucks does. They own the vertical from top to bottom.
Right.
What happens when that goes wrong? Is that a catastrophic system failure that comes out of that? Can you sweep it under the rug and just try to make good with some press releases? So in between that event and the next one, we tried to find that out. We put out all sorts of probiologic propaganda across the web, across Twitter, to people's phones who had attended the event. We were texting them every once in a while saying, you can still believe in us. Don't worry. We were hosting fireside chats with the CEO where anybody could like request an audience with him and ask questions that he would really nimbly navigate around. And this anarchist organization that we only sort of designed popped up in opposition to Biologic and began asking all the difficult questions. And once this organization surfaced, we began to seed them with material that they could then leak to incriminate Biologic. So we were giving them videos we'd shot of staff behaving badly, leaked memos, like hundreds and hundreds of pages of redacted memos and instant messages and emails that had gotten taken out of the company, and these were all released on this site that our fans ran for us called BioLeaks. That was kind of like the corporate WikiLeaks of its time last summer. And there was tons of this stuff going on. There were hundreds of people active on this community. Biologic was trying to ensnare its people with a versatile intern program that's kind of like a rewards program, a frequent flyer program for a pharmaceutical company. So they were doing everything in their power just to like keep things from collapsing. But they couldn't do it, and the pills that they released, the Alpha BioRenew, wound up having a defect in them. They compromised people's immune systems and then mutated their immune system code to hide the fact that they'd been compromised.
Wow.
And then spread through whatever kind of symptoms they decided to mutate to. So flu-like symptoms, cholera-like symptoms, so it could get into the water supply, it could be spread by aerosol. It was a total pandemic disaster waiting to happen. So our next event was this immunization clinic we designed. We rented a 200-year-old church in downtown Toronto for one night in September of last year, and we transformed it top to bottom into kind of a corporate immunization clinic where you would come in and be profiled in the way that you might be in 5 or 10 years into the future, we figured, in sort of a friendly way, but with lots of really inappropriate personal questions about your health history. There was a little diagram, like draw here where you feel sick and where Biologic staff might have touched you. And then you got sprayed with like carbon dioxide and with a prototype new version of the immunization for the product. And then you had to sit down and watch a video, and then you had to take another pill, and they were like, no, you can trust us this time. And a whole bunch of people this time, because we had about 4,000 people come through this installation, didn't take the pill. They were like, you guys are really freaking scary, and we're not taking your drugs in a church.
Right.
So those people, we took their picture and composited it into a really scary like warning message saying, if you see this person, please call this 1-866 number, which is a real number where you could leave a real voice message.
Nice.
And, report this person to us, and we'll come get them, and we'll take them away. And then we projected these warning messages out onto the side of the church in like a 30-foot wide projection. So there were hundreds of people coming in and out of this thing, and it was part of an all-night art event that happens in Toronto every year. So there were about 50,000 people outside just milling around outside the church, getting the living daylight scared out of them, I hope.
Right. It seems like that's part of the, like, you focus on affect, right? Not getting people just to think, obviously, about the future, but to feel it, right? To embody it and to just sort of absorb it in ways that, let's be completely honest here, are a little bit discomforting, right? That's sort of getting people out of their comfort zones. And I think that's, to my mind, that's one of the most interesting aspects of this project, is how you're just challenging people to feel the future in ways that they might not even consider, to be preferable. So, okay, we're going to take another quick break. We'll hear more about ZTO and this amazing project put together by Trevor Haldenby. Trevor is a graduate of OCAD-used Master of Design and Strategic Foresight and Innovation, an award-winning designer and futurist. You're watching Finding Our Futures. I'm John Sweeney. This is HRCFS, and we'll be back in a flash.
Aloha. I'm Jay Fidel for ThinkTech. For nearly half a century, the Hawaiian Foreign Trade Zone, number 9, has brought the benefits of the Foreign Trade Zone program to Hawaii businesses and entrepreneurs. DBED, the Hawaii Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism, operates Hawaii's Foreign Trade Zone program. It does so to encourage international business and economic development. The Foreign Trade Zone mission is to increase the amount of international trading activity in Hawaii, thereby providing employment opportunities for the residents of our island state. For more information, see ftz9.org. I'm Jay Fidel of ThinkTech. Mahalo.
Aloha kako. Welcome back to Finding Our Futures. I'm John Sweeney. This is the Hawaii Research Center for Future Studies. And today we're chatting with Trevor Haldenby, award-winning designer, futurist. Can I say that you're the CEO and architect of Biologic? Or no, there actually is a different CEO. So
There's a CEO. He's dead.
He's
but,
dead.
I'm technically Biologic's in-house design futurist.
Oh, that is what they say, right? You're literally designing your own future, right? That's what they were told you to do. Okay, so when we left off last time, you had just said that there are 50,000 people milling around Toronto in this art festival, and on the side of this church, they see all of this stuff about immunization and biologic. So I have to, what are people saying about this? Aside from people who are a part of it, how is this diffused amongst the community? Because I would imagine by your using social media, by the extension of networks, that there are random people seeing this, and how are they responding?
Mostly people were pretty scared, although there was a significant minority of the people that we touched who I think were fascinated and were gung-ho, 100% into Biologic's vision of the future, which deep inside I think is what we expected and what we wanted to cultivate. We wanted to find the people out there for whom this really compromised, really aggressive vision of consumer or lifestyle biotechnology was totally cool. And these were not even the early adopters. These are the early adopters of 2020 waiting to happen.
Right.
And so some of them, as many of them as we could, we tried to bring into the story, bring into the organization, bring into the experience, particularly for its epic conclusion, which took place about 3 weeks after that event at the church, where we took over this environmental education center just outside of downtown Toronto, which is in it used to be a quarry, but for the last 100 years, it's been allowed to overgrow. So this organization called Evergreen bought it about 10 years ago and said, we're going to transform half of it into a park and the other half into an environmental education center. And it is the closest thing on Earth. And I mean, you're in Hawaii, so you've got it all down. But it is the closest thing on Earth to Jurassic Park that I've ever experienced. It's like this futuristic, off-the-grid building with balconies and rails cascading outwards from the top. And as soon as we saw it and as soon as we thought of it in this context, we said to ourselves, the team creating the project, this is Biologic's lockdown compound. And it all goes to hell and the city is burning and people are fleeing and their man-made pandemic has shifted from something that's an inconvenience or a social faux pas to something that's a disaster. This is where they're going to bring everybody.
That's the bunker, yeah.
This is the bunker. So we took over the woods around the thing, about 3 kilometers worth of trails into the woods. Wow. And we took over the buildings themselves. We turned one of them in particular into a very futuristic kind of cattle pen for sick people who are sick with Biologic's disease. And then we took the very audacious next step of charging premium dollar tickets to this experience just to see if it would work. So you could attend the event in 4 different capacities. You could come as an evacuee of the city of Toronto who had been infected with Biologic's disease, the BRX virus. You could come as a member of the private security force that they brought in to supervise this camp that they'd created as a last resort to work on a vaccine and keep everybody who was sick in one place. You could come as a member of Biologic's board of directors and sit up in a glass room above everybody else and drink wine and eat cheese and systematically make decisions about who got to live and who got to die and what the new world order was going to look like. So kind of an informal scenario planning exercise that was a first-time thing for a lot of people.
Right.
Or you could come as a member of the EXE organization, which is the anarchist organization trying to sabotage Biologic. And there were different ticket prices for each of those different roles, and very different kinds of activities attached to each of those different roles. So some of them saw people like running around in the woods like guerrillas with like spy cameras and sniper scopes and smoke grenades, trying to alert the authorities, trying to document what was going on and leak it to the press. Other people were like running around trying to do cover-up, interrogating people. Wow. Some of the people they were interrogating were plants, and some of the people they were interrogating with were actors and plants with military training. So every once in a while, a guy in your group who you thought was your friend would like grab somebody by the neck and smash him against the guardrail and like take his wallet and burn it. Wow. And it was a pretty terrifying experience for a lot of people. And we really wanted to bring together this hunger that people had for like an escape the city apocalyptic entertainment experience with a really remote kind of black swan event from a possible future where this lifestyle biotech vision turns out to be a bit of a front for something else, which turns out to mean disaster for humanity. The event was pretty successful. We sold out the most expensive and most interactively engaged tickets the fastest, which was a really good validation for us. We processed several hundred people through this thing over 2 nights, 4 shows, and almost died ourselves trying to pull this all together and convince the bank that we weren't trying to fund an offshore terrorist organization or something. Right. This is showbiz or foresight. And they didn't really seem too receptive to either of those. Right. So the story came to a crashing end. At the end, the camp was overrun not by a horde of infected zombies or by the military, but by survivors from outside of the city who'd had enough of biologics garbage and were ready to storm the camp and take back the city for their own. And we kind of left it hanging there at that moment, just 5 seconds before the apocalypse.
Wow. Wow. That's an amazing story. Yeah. And so
it was lots of fun.
I'm absolutely interested in how you were able to, I would say, craft what is clearly a very ethical, political, engaged experience that, again, where did you draw those lines? Because like you're saying, like foresight and showbiz, I mean, you obviously wanted people to have an experience that they could walk away and feel like, you know, that they're learning something, they're doing it along the way. But then how did you find what clearly was a sweet spot to not alienate people, but to sort of bring them into this world and then give them enough freedom? And I think this is the most interesting part of this project, give them enough freedom to take on that world on their own, right? And to live and breathe in that world in ways that sort of empowered them to move through that. So can maybe just give a little bit more sense as to how you were able to do that? I know you were managing a team who was working to do that with designers and artists and other people. So how did you start to build that?
Performers and musicians and munitions together at last. It really was as much as it started with a nucleus of an idea, kind of like a hailstone falling from the sky, by the time we hit ground, there were probably about 150 people involved in the production of the project. Most of them volunteers. The core team was also volunteering to create the piece. Our goal was always just to break even on it, not necessarily to use it as a profit center for the rest of our lives. There's this design aesthetic or process that's got a lot of traction in storytelling right now, all the way up from like the top blockbusters in Hollywood down to independent productions, down to things that kids are playing around with that, I mean, I played around with when I was a little kid in terms of the stories I told myself about my army men or my dinosaur toys, or the books I was reading, the science fiction books, the Foundation series, Rendezvous with Rama, Jurassic Park. And the idea that seems to be getting traction now is often wrapped up with the word transmedia. It's this idea that to really tell 21st century stories for 21st century audiences right, there are 3 core pillars or rules that you want to adhere to. The first is that you want to focus on building a story world, not just writing down and telling your story. For a story to be compelling and for a story to grow and flex, you want to define the world that it exists in. And like Star Wars and George Lucas are famous for this. You've got Coruscant hanging behind you. The idea that there could be a city planet, that there could be like a jungle planet with Ewoks on it, that there would be a desert planet that is kind of like New Mexico in 50,000 years ago and maybe sort of in the future. And the world can grow as boundlessly as fans and the story's creators want it to. So that's the first sort of pillar of transmedia that we tried to stick to all through our story, was don't build, or rather get the story as simply as it can be told, like a myth or like a warning. Get that down as quickly as possible and just use it as a foundation. And on top of that, build whatever people want to build that connects to it. As long as there's a good fit, we'll add it on and expand.
Right. Yeah, that idea of world building, I think, is really key, and that's something that seems to be working its way into Futures. And the idea that you're not just building whatever little X world or X idea, event, scenario, but that there's an entire world that is driving that, right? That is behind that.
Yeah.
So, okay, hold on.
There's an algorithm. Yeah.
Exactly. There's a whole process. Okay, so we're going to hear the other two. We're going to have to take our last break. Man, these breaks are killing me. I keep on hearing these stories. So we'll hear more from Trevor Haldenby, award-winning designer and futurist, graduate from OCAD University, the Master of Design in Strategic Foresight and Innovation. You're watching Finding Our Futures on ThinkTech Hawaii. I am John Sweeney at HRCFS. Hold on, we'll be back in a flash.
We want to thank our underwriters.
Hawaiian Electric Company and its affiliates Maui Electric on Maui and Hawaii Electric Light Company on Hawaii Island are deeply committed to the communities they serve.
Galen Ho is a senior executive of BAE Systems, a global defense, security, and aerospace company.
The High Tech Development Corporation, the state's leading technology agency, attached to the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism.
Castle and COOKE, Hawaii, with a time-honored legacy that spans more than 160 years and revolves around its mission of investing in Hawaii, creating communities, and providing for the needs of our state.
Hawaii Gas, formerly the gas company, a proponent of the liquefied natural gas initiative, helping Hawaii achieve its transition to clean energy and a better energy future.
Collateral Analytics, a Hawaii-based tech company empowering the real estate industry with greater and faster access to the tools and data they need to make better informed property investment decisions.
I'm Nicole Horry. Thanks so much for joining us on ThinkTech.
I'm Maria Kashem. See you next time.
Aloha kako, and welcome back to Finding Our Futures. I'm John Sweeney at HRCFS. If you've made it this far, you are in for the stunning conclusion of the story of Z.TO Biologic, which is being told by Trevor Haldenby, award-winning designer and futurist, graduate from the Master of Design in Strategic Foresight and Innovation at OCAD-U. Okay, Trevor, so we heard one of the pillars of transmedia, and we are anxiously awaiting the other two.
So build a story world, don't tell a story. The second pillar that I like to come back to is spread your story across media, and this is the one that you see the most transmedia traction on out in the world, in Kickstarter, in the news, in Fast Company, and your favorite entertainment franchise. Don't just build the movie, build the game that tells the backstory to the movie, and the novel that introduces the characters, and the comic book that shows you how it all wrapped up together, and the websites for the fictional companies in the story that let you dive as deep as you want to go.
Right.
So we tried to stick to that throughout the development of Z.TO, really fleshing out Biologic on all of the platforms on which you would expect to encounter a company like Biologic. The third pillar, and this is the crucial one, and the one without which we couldn't have done this story, is engage your audience as an audience of co-creators and curators, not passive consumers. You know, you're going to have some passive consumers, and we were putting on theater shows from one perspective. So we had a couple of events where, you know, a good percentage of the audience was just there to take it in and maybe do a little playful back and forth. But wherever we found people who wanted to go deeper, who wanted to bring their fan fiction into the story, whether it was slash fan fiction or not, wherever somebody had made something and brought it to a show and said, like, I have a pill too, can Biologic sell my pill? The answer is always yes.
Right.
If it connects, if there's a fit, always bring your consumers or fans, audiences into the story as creators wherever they want to fit. So we had people making videos for us, making theme songs and jingles for Biologic, making fictional products, creating whole characters. Two of the people that led the teams that we were putting audience members in for the final event were fans that we didn't know about 3 months earlier and who decided that they wanted to have a part in the story rather than just play along in it. And to a different extent, that's true of a large number of the people who play along. So those three pillars, we finished the Z.TO story. We got right to the brink of ending the world. And we were sort of expecting that we could just walk away after that and then maybe do a different kind of future story through a different kind of entertainment. We could do like the future of farming through weekend getaways where we show people what it's like to do agriculture in an organic world in 2025. And we started getting all these phone calls from people saying, can you come do biologic for me? Can you come use that story to talk to my people about the future? And that hadn't really occurred to us as a group that would happen, let alone that it would happen so fast. And the first big call we got was from Autodesk, the American design company, from a guy named Tom Wujek, who wrote this amazing book that came out last year called Imagine, Design, Create, that is about all the cool stuff going on in design, both the human side and the technological side and the economic side, that is connected in some way to exponential technology curves. So infinite computing, reality digitized, the world of the cloud, the Internet of Things. What does all that stuff mean for the future of design? So just 24 hours before I came to the HRCFS last December, and just 2 weeks after the biologic story had concluded, I flew down to Vegas and did a keynote at Autodesk's big industry trade show, Autodesk University, as the CEO of Biologic in the year 2025. And it was an award ceremony. And all these people, like really cool future-facing people from all different industries. Brian David Johnson from Intel came up and talked about the future of basically unlikable AIs and how to get along with an artificial intelligence, you wouldn't want it to follow the rules all the time. You'd want it to be a little non-deterministic and to push back at you now and then. So he talked about that and won an award for like achievements in artificial intelligence. And I won the achievement award for what I thought was advances in biological design, but it wasn't until I got on the airplane and got scanned by U.S. Customs, I don't know if this will show, that I realized it said advances in bioterrorism, which is not a great thing to get on an airplane with a sharp object inscribed with.
And yet you made it to Hawaii. That's amazing.
And somehow they let me into Hawaii. Maybe they knew the VOG was going on and that it was just something I'd have to, they would have to let me through and I'd figure it out for myself. I'd learned my lesson. So I did this award show for them, and then a few months later called Tom from Autodesk back again and said, like, could we do that again? Could we do something else like that again? And he said, yeah, the traction on that experience was really good. People loved getting a glimpse of the future that was playful, that was coherent, that had people attached to it who were actually working in really interesting fields on the cutting edge of tomorrow, and on the cutting edge of foresight work. So we did another awards show at the TED conference last February in Long Beach in California, at which point I said, we've really got to do this again, but rather than rehashing some of the biologic story and giving me an award for it, I want to custom create a story for you guys so badly. So you tell me what your trends and drivers and what sort of areas you're interested in and what scenarios you've explored of the future of design and technology in the past, and we'll build a story for you, me and the mission business who created Z.to. So they said it's space exploration, it's the commercialization of genetic property, like instead of IP, GP. It's the corporatization of the world and increasing globalization. And it's the trend towards everybody becoming more of a designer, or everybody claiming to become more of a designer. Right. What can you do with that? So this was the mission business's first consulting activity. And looking back now, we call it thought leadership marketing. But really, we were helping them find their way through a story, a playful story, where all of the attendees of an event they were running played a part in the story, towards feeling out what particularly the negative implications of a certain future scenario might be. So we created this space mission from a new division of Biologic 15 years from now called Shadowfall. This is their delightful slogan, Ferrum intus, ferrum externus, iron within, iron without. Nice. And in this future, Biologic had gone asteroid mining. And they were off in space, but rather than sending astronauts to do it, they'd sent an artificial intelligence. And the artificial intelligence found an extraterrestrial life form on the asteroid it was mining, but the AI had been programmed to act like a child in the Brian David Johnson style rather than like a responsible adult. So it hid the extraterrestrial life and then fired it back to Earth in a probe as its pet. Wow. And everybody in the room, and these were This was for an event at the NASA Research Park last May, the same day my child was born. So that was a little bit of a hectic afternoon. These are some of the same people who were at the Minority Report weekend convention trying to build the world of that story. People like Douglas Copeland and Hugh Debberley and all sorts of really interesting technology people, science fiction people, design people. We gave them all roles in different departments in Biologic and said, it's your job to figure out this crisis. We produced all the paraphernalia, all the stuff you'd need, the big mission control screens, the mock-ups of the spacecraft with like auto-destruct sequences, system maps of the AI's cognition so that you could try and find a trick backdoor to get it to self-destruct. And we just like put them to work on it for 3 hours with a big countdown clock in the end of the room. That was the amount of time before the probe re-entered the Earth's atmosphere. And ultimately they were set up to fail, and they failed. And the probe crash landed outside Moffett Field at Ames Research Park. And we sort of blew it up. And the goo started to leak out, and people started to get it on their hands, and they screamed, and they cowered, and they froth bubbled from their mouths. And it was a very biologic ending, a very happy ending to the story. And then we sort of stepped back, and a conversation unfolded for about a day and a half at this event at NASA Research Park about what it meant to see the future through the lens of science fiction, and then to turn the binoculars around so you get that really weird effect where you're looking at something really close as if it's far away, rather than looking through them the proper way and trying to forecast your future or pluralize your future. Everybody switched the binoculars around a few times and had a really productive conversation about what science fiction meant to them. The mission business went away from that, and this is the 5 of us on the team. Me, David, Elena, Martha, and Byron. And we said, wow, we should help companies do this 24/7, 365 days a year. We should figure out what areas they're interested in, where they're having some troubles, whether it's with knowledge transfer, HR, runaway AIs, manufacturing, supply chain, global economics, whatever. And we'll create an immersive transmedia story that is a world, not a simple narrative, that spreads across all the platforms it wants to spread across, and that it actively engages the stakeholders in that strategy process or design process as creators of the story. And we'll go do this for anybody who's willing to pay us to do this. And so we've been building, for the last 3 months or so, we've been building the formal business plan for how that will work, which has been just joyful process. Most people at the bank who get startups coming in, I think they're like, I want to open a store to sell pizza crusts. Just the crusts. And they're like, wow, that sounds crazy, but you guys just might be able to do it. And we're like, we're going to simulate the future for people at NASA, and they're all going to die at the end. Because we got to make a point about how the future has unforeseen implications. And it goes from growth to transformation to discipline to collapse, just like that. And they're kind of like, huh. Okay. And you need a line of credit for this? Yeah. So it's been kind of a tumultuous experience, but we've learned an enormous amount about ourselves, about how to articulate this kind of work, about how to frame it through the lens of, as I said earlier, knowledge transfer, strategic leadership, innovation facilitation, and design thinking. So that I think we're getting really close to a value proposition that is really attractive to a lot of organizations in terms of helping them change the stories they tell themselves about the future by giving them a really like AAA kick-ass experience for the future that they might not see coming.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. And what I find most inspiring about your work is how it empowers people to feel engaged with the futures and not to make them feel as if they don't have the capacity, the competency to work towards a preferred future, right? To think critically about all the possibilities, all the potentialities, but really at the end of the day, to actually move them to a space where they feel that they can deal with uncertainty productively. And then again, like you're saying, build a world and hopefully a better world for everyone and to move in that direction.
So hard to do. I mean, most of what we did with Zed.io and with the original Biologic story was really nasty negative reinforcement. It was taking people off the street and showing them a future that we designed so that they couldn't possibly love it. They might be seduced by it, but they couldn't really love it. And the goal was that they would walk out of that and say, like, wow, if that's actually going to happen, I've got to start to steer away from that today. I'm going to go to that GMO protest or read up more on this material, or try to develop a better critical spectrum of understanding about how the world works. What we'd like to do with more of our future work is lean a little bit more on positive reinforcement and on rewarding people for thinking outside of the box or thinking collaboratively or bringing combinatorial skill sets to the challenge of trying to imagine a sustainable future for themselves, for their organization, for the world. And that's been a really big challenge for us, trying to pair gripping storytelling and suspenseful storytelling with a feel-good message, or at least a feel-good formula or system that people work within. It's been pretty challenging, but it's getting close, and it's pretty satisfying to get there.
Yeah, it sounds like the most amazing work that one can undertake. So, Trevor, Finding Our Futures, award-winning designer, futurist, all-around amazing person, Trevor Haldenby, with the mission.
Biohazard.
And but apparently bioterrorist as well. Don't worry, we'll edit that part out. And one of the major players and brains behind the mission business, graduate of the Master in Design and Innovation, Strategic Foresight and Innovation from OCAD University. Trevor, fantastic. I hope to have you back for a future show. We'll give it a little bit and see what you guys have cooking. And this is Finding Our Futures. I'm John Sweeney at HRCFS. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys next week. Aloha.